Energy choice is on the ballot in November and will be the most expensive ballot question in Nevada history. We're talking with a proponent of the constitutional amendment. Welcome to Nevada Politics Today. I'm your host, Victor Joecks. 1 month ago, I offered both the yes and no sides of question 3 a chance to debate. The yes on 3 side readily agreed, but after a month of stalling, the no on 3 campaign refused the invitation. So joining us today is Jon Wellinghoff. He's the CEO of Grid Policy, former chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and is with the Yes on 3 campaign. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Victor. Happy to be here.
I want to start with a question that I think is on most people's minds. If question 3 passes, what's going to happen to electricity rates here in Nevada?
Well, if question 3 passes, electric rates will go down. We've done a study done by a nationally recognized utility expert who's indicated very clearly that there are substantial tax savings in accumulated deferred income taxes and additional savings in over earnings from the company that would come back to Nevada ratepayers to lower their rates. So, number one, we already have a pot of money that we see will, in fact, lower rates. And in addition to that, if you look at what competition has been doing in other states, the actual experience, for example, in Texas, we know that rates will be lowered. For example, we had Chairman Pat Wood, former chairman of the Texas Commission and former chairman of FERC, come to Nevada and talk about his experience. He actually was the one who initiated energy choice in Texas. And he said that, he recently chose among retail providers in Houston, where he lives, and he was able to choose a rate of 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That rate is substantially less than the rate in Las Vegas, which is approximately 13 cents a kilowatt hour now.
And Jon,
So,
I want to talk about what deregulation has done to rates in other states. Let's go to clip 1. This is a campaign commercial put out by the opponents of question 3. Here's
sure.
what they say.
Fact. In states that deregulated electricity, average rates are 30% higher than Nevada's.
Well, power prices are not higher.
So they're
Very
lying?
no, they're parsing the words. You said the word average, right?
Mm-hmm.
So average means that if you have 150 choices in Texas, some of those are higher and some of those are lower. But what's interesting is if we have choice, you don't have to pick the highest rate. I.e., you don't have to pick, say, a 5-year flat contract that gives you all renewables that might be a higher rate than you're paying in other jurisdictions. You can choose instead a lower rate, like Pat Wood chose, of 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So by them picking averages, they're picking the total of both very high rates in those states, because some rates provide flat rates over a very long period of time, and the rates are obviously going to be higher, and also extremely low rates. And that average comes out to be some point that may be higher than what we're paying in Nevada. But fortunately, if we have choice, we don't have to pick the average rate or the highest rate in Nevada as they do in Texas and other places. You can pick the lowest rate.
Yeah, I know advocates of question 3 like to talk about Texas a lot. Are there other states that have deregulation and have lower prices than Nevada, or is it just Texas?
Yes, absolutely. Pennsylvania, for example, a number of other states have. Again, if you look at the multiple rates that are offered, if you pick the lowest rates in those states, you'd see that the lowest rates in those states, in fact, in many instances, are lower than what is currently the only rate that you get to pick in Nevada. You only get to pick one rate. You don't get a choice in Nevada. You don't have an average rate, a rate, or a low rate. You only have one rate. And there are a number of states that have deregulation, that have restructuring, that have lower rates. The other thing that you have to look at is it's a relative reduction. A number of these other states started at a much higher price than Nevada already. So they were able to lower their rates considerably through competition, but because of other factors, because they were in a high cost area, New England or whatever, their rates may have started out at a much higher rate anyway.
And I want to go to graphic 1. The PUC of Nevada issued a report on question 3 earlier this year. And here's some of what they found. Nevadans currently enjoy some of the lowest average electricity rates in the country. The Energy Choice Initiative is reasonably likely to increase the average monthly electric bills of Nevadans, at least in the short term. And I have two questions about that. One,
Sure.
do Nevadans enjoy some of the lowest electricity rates in the country? And if so, why should they put those at risk if the rates will go up under question 3?
Well, the rates won't go up under question 3; they'll go down. Number one. So if people want choice and they want their rates to go down, they should vote for question 3. Number one. Number two, Nevadans have a relatively low rate in comparison to the rest of the country.
So the PUC is just wrong, is what you're saying. That in the short term, the rates will not go up if question 3 passes.
That's correct. Because of these tax effects that I mentioned, that the analyst that we had, this very well respected utility analyst who did this work, the PUC did not even consider those tax effects in their they missed them entirely. Their staff missed those tax effects entirely in looking at what was going to happen to the rates in Nevada. So yes, they're wrong.
And I want to look at something else the PUC talked about, which was stranded assets. Let's go to graphic 2, and this is another part of their report. NV Energy will likely be forced to divest its generating assets and assign its long-term power purchase contracts to new owners. Nevada ratepayers will remain liable for any financial losses incurred by NV Energy from these stranded costs, which could foreseeably exceed several $billions. Now, even if Choice would save Nevadans money, won't those stranded assets increase bills in the short term?
No, they won't. Number one, because there's two assumptions in that statement that you read from the PUC. One is that they'll likely have to divest. Number one, it's not necessary that they'll have to divest. Nothing in the ballot initiative requires that they divest. It only requires that there be, meaningful competition and that there not be generation monopolies. If there are other entities who are providing generation service, they don't necessarily have to divest. Number two, those amounts that they talk about, those several $billion, are amounts that Nevadans are already on the hook for anyway.
So you're saying NV Energy could actually compete in the open market? They wouldn't just be doing the power lines and the infrastructure?
Well, they could compete on the generation side, on the wholesale side. They couldn't compete on the retail side.
Okay. I want to jump to the deregulation that people are most familiar with, which happened in California in the early 2000s, and it led to rolling blackouts there. NV Energy, if you think it's expensive, if you think it's not, they've at least been reliable. Won't deregulation open Nevadans up to the threat of those blackouts that crippled California 20 years ago?
No, it won't. Number one, and first of all, when you say deregulation, it really isn't deregulation, it's restructuring, in the sense that when we put this in place in Nevada, and it has been put in place in other places like Texas, Pennsylvania, and other states, it hasn't been deregulation. It's actually been a restructuring that's put in a market regulation that's ensured that consumers have protections, ensured that power is still maintained on a reliable basis, as it is in all the other states where this restructuring's taken place. And in California, what happened in California was not a retail deregulation failure. It was a wholesale failure. It was a failure at the wholesale market level, where a number of generators, including Enron and others, withheld power from the markets on purpose to drive up prices. And that's what caused the rolling blackouts. It wasn't the fact that there was, unreliable power because of a retail market restructuring. That is not what happened in California.
How many?
What happened? What
Sorry.
happened in California ultimately was a wholesale failure that won't occur again, because FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that I used to chair, has put in place protections to ensure it won't happen again, and it hasn't happened again since it happened in California in 2000. It has not reoccurred again anywhere in the country since then.
If Nevada implements question 3, how many providers, not how many plans, but how many providers do you think will come into the retail market?
Well, currently there's 40 or 50 in Texas. I think in Nevada we'll probably have a smaller number because certainly Nevada is smaller than Texas. But I think there's no question that we'll have, 10 to 20 retail providers in Nevada.
We're going to have to leave it there. Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Victor. Appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for watching. Remember, if it involves Nevada politics, we're talking about it right here on Nevada Politics Today. I'll see you next week.